You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Back in the spring, a unique tri-choir collaboration exploring and indulging in the breathtaking music of the Baroque was derailed by a late winter wallop. Now, with another season come and gone, the Winnipeg Baroque Festival returns for a long overdue, highly anticipated final performance in their inaugural year, a Bach masterwork, the St. John Passion. To hear more, I'm joined by conductor Kathleen Allen. Welcome back to Classic 107, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to see you. First things first, I have to ask, have you checked the forecast for this weekend?
I think it looks good. I think I'm knocking on wood as we speak, but it looks like a lot better than the storm of the century they were forecasting in April. So we're optimistic.
Ain't that the truth? It looks like it's going to be a lovely fall weekend to begin this new month of October. And just to remind listeners, we had that winter storm that was bearing down on us in early April. And there was so much uncertainty around flights and travel and even leaving the house at that point. Like you say, it was to be a storm of the century. Now, thankfully, that cancellation, a decision that certainly wasn't made lightly, has turned into a postponement. And here we are. How are you feeling heading into this weekend?
Oh, we're so excited to be finally putting this together. There was so much momentum in the spring. We had people coming from all over North America for this week-long festival that was going to be this hub and this really celebratory week with a variety of concerts going on. We got three out of the four concerts done. We achieved a lot of what we were hoping to achieve. But the biggest and most momentous event of that festival, unfortunately, could not happen as scheduled. So going into this, we're so excited, and the vast majority of personnel are able to return for this performance. So we lucked out on the date.
Yeah, lucked out is putting it mildly. These are in-demand performers, like you say, from across the continent. The fact that even a date could be found that would work is a victory in and of itself, isn't it?
It really is amazing. Yeah, it just fit perfectly in people's schedules. So I feel like it's the fates rewarding us for our trials.
So let's chat about this brilliant music, the culmination of the first ever Winnipeg Baroque Festival, music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And just to lay a little bit of groundwork, a passion, not referring in this instance to an emotion, but instead an alternate meaning, referring to the story of the suffering and the death of Christ found in the Gospels, right? Just to lay that foundational bit of information.
That's right. It is a story. So there is a narrator who takes us through. There are scenes, there are events, there are characters, and the choir and orchestra act as this underlying, they sort of change roles actually. The choir moves from being part of the action, sort of an angry mob character in the story, and then becomes us. It becomes the listener, becomes the audience, and we comment on the action. It becomes all of humanity, really, this way of speaking about the action that's happening in the story. It's not quite an opera, but it is definitely narrative in that kind of sense.
Bach, of course, didn't write an opera, but some have called these passion settings. He wrote maybe up to five of them. Two of them survive. There's the more famous, um, uh, grand, more expansive Saint Matthew, and then there's this one, the Saint John. Some people have called these almost like Bach's operas in a way. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes, in a way, I think so. They were, however, written within his position as a church musician. So in between the two parts of the St. John Passion, there's part one and there's part two, and in the middle would have happened a very long sermon. So yes, it's opera, but it doesn't have the same purpose in terms of spectacle and performance that we look for in opera. It's not entertainment. It really is a commentary on the human experience and is meant to be collectively experienced in more of a congregational feeling than that divide between audience and performer, which I think makes it really special.
Like you say, part of his duties as Thomas Cantor in Leipzig, music that was first heard Good Friday, 1724. People might be more familiar with the St. Matthew Passion. How would you characterize the St. John and Bach's musical setting of this story?
Uh, it's a great question. The St. Matthew is much grander. There are two
Mm.
orchestras, two choirs, a children's choir that sings the opening, and is perhaps more of that spectacle that we were talking about in an operatic sense. Both are, of course, absolutely stunning music. You're talking to a pretty big Bach fan here, Simon. So I'm just going to rave about both. But the St. John has a special place in my heart. It's almost like a chamber passion. We have 17 players coming from the Pacific Baroque Orchestra. That's in stark contrast to the at least 30 something you'd need to
Mhm.
pull off a St. John, let alone choral forces. We have 28 singers this weekend. For a St. Matthew, we certainly wouldn't want less than, 35, 36, 40 singers in that kind of work because of the divisions of the parts. So it is more intimate. It is very personal. The way that the evangelist describes the action sometimes feels matter of fact, but then the cellist will respond in this text painting that paints the action and just kind of cuts right to your heart and makes that action feel so personal and intimate.
It almost in a way seems more raw to me, the St. John
Hmm.
Passion. Like it's just not rough around the edges. It's not the right term, but you know what, that idea that it is so dramatic, it is right there, and it's something that we can experience moving through this performance with all the forces that are there to perform, right?
I think raw is a great word to describe it. And as I'm, getting into the score this week and preparing for this weekend, it does just feel so relevant to the challenges that the world is going through right now. Even though we live in such different times from Bach and from the biblical story that we're talking about, there's so much suffering, there's so much greed and anger and I think it's a work that can unite us in that sense of mourning and that sense of hope
Hmm.
for what the arts can do for the world right now. It feels important that we're performing this and bringing people together in an unusual way.
Important work, it certainly is. This is a work that Bach continued to tinker with throughout his life. He kind of played around with things, orchestrations, texts, and the like. Can you talk about the forces that the Winnipeg Baroque Festival has assembled for this performance? You've sort of already referenced the Pacific Baroque Orchestra. Let's start there, shall we?
Sure. So the Pacific Baroque Orchestra was lined up to come in April. It was a scramble to cancel all of their flights as soon as the government made that weather warning. And we are having most of them come back. We're calling it members of the Pacific Baroque Orchestra this time, because there are a couple of subs coming in, most of whom play in Tafelmusik or other period orchestras that you may have heard of around the continent. So our concertmaster is Christina Zacharias, a native Manitoban, and she is a tenured member of the Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra in Toronto and is coming back as a guest concertmaster with the Pacific Baroque Orchestra and playing with us this weekend. A couple of other Tafelmusik folks in there. Our soloist roster is almost exactly the same as announced last spring. Jonathan Adams, incredible baritone, working all over the world, really specializing in early music, bringing their lived experience as a Cree, Métis, Indigenous person to their performance of Baroque and early music. Just has a really amazing perspective on that repertoire. Haitham Haidar is our evangelist, living and working in Montreal. Vicky St. Pierre is coming from New Brunswick. She's our alto soloist. Jane Fingler, another homecoming star, soprano who I first met as a singer in Canzona. And then we have Mel Braun is singing the role of Jesus. Chris Cornelson is singing in the choir, also stepping out to sing the small role of Peter, Simon Peter, and Paul Brooke Weens also singing the chorus and taking on the dual role of Pilate in this performance. Nolan Kaler is stepping in as our tenor aria soloist. And we're really excited to have so many local stars featured as well as this international presence.
Yeah, I mean, this is just something else. I mean, you just ran us through the list, and I mean, you're grinning from ear to ear. I think the audience is also going to be grinning because they're going to be treated to some phenomenal musicianship, and soloists and Pacific Baroque Orchestra members of Pacific Baroque Orchestra plus Tafelmusik and some other world renowned ensembles. No big deal in Winnipeg. There also happens to be some phenomenal choral singing that is going to be happening as well. Tell us about that.
That's right. So this whole festival came about because Dead of Winter, Canzona, and Polycoro wanted to unite our passions, no pun intended, of early music and create something that none of us could do on our own. we're stronger together. Coming out of the pandemic, we felt strongly that we wanted to make a splash and do something big. So it really does represent a coming together like these ensembles have never done before. We're calling it Winnipeg Choral Supergroup. All of these singers sing in one or more of those professional choirs I just named. But this particular roster of singers has never appeared together, the Winnipeg Baroque Festival Chorus.
So special, so special. And I know people have been looking forward to it for a very long time. So just to clarify for any listeners who were set to go back on April 15th on Good Friday to take in this performance, if people had a ticket for that performance or Winnipeg Baroque Festival Pass, which I know you were also selling, those are being honored on Sunday as well, right?
That's right. All of those people should have received an email with a promo code to redeem their tickets for this Sunday's concert. If they haven't, please don't worry. We have your names. We will not be turning people away. If you can redeem that code, it's great. If you need to purchase tickets, it's winnipegbaroquefestival.com. And you can always reach out at info@winnipegbaroquefestival.com, and we will be happy to set you up with tickets or get your passes from last time converted.
And we will be sure to share those links as well, because I'm sure there's some listeners who are thinking, you know what? I would love to hear some Good Friday music on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. No one's going to say no to Bach, especially when it's performed by a supergroup, renowned soloists, and some phenomenal hip players, historically informed players. Kathleen, I'm so thrilled that this is happening. I know you are as well. And happy singing. Winnipeg Baroque Festival wraps up on Sunday. It is, well, it is something else.
Thank you so much. We're excited.